But inshallah, that and what are the words of Imam Mahdi will be covered in our next discussion. Sayings and hadiths of Imam Mahdi. So without further ado, with a loud salawat, please welcome Mr. Hassan Akhawani to the floor.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
My name is Hassan Akhavanik, and I'm going to present about the sayings of Imam Mahdi. And thank you for the introduction. I guess as Mahdi said, there's a couple points we want to go through. The first is, if we know Imam Mahdi is in hiding, then how do we know his sayings? And we're also going to go through the examples of sayings recorded so far by the Imam. And what can we learn about the Imam in the present day from the recorded sayings? Also, we're going to go through talking about how can we get into spiritual contact with the Imam and how we can change our behavior based off what we learned and the Imam's teachings. And the first point we need to go through is defining tawqiyat. Tawqiyat are narrations and replies to questions provided through the special deputies of Imam Mahdi. And there were two periods of occultation. The first is the lesser occultation, which lasted 69 years. And the second is the greater occultation, which we're currently in right now. And during the lesser occultation, usually questions were given to the representatives of the time and then transmitted back within 2 days, and answers were given that way. And also among the tawqiyat were du'as, such as Du'a Iftitah, Ziyarat al Yasin, Du'a Faraj, and Du'a Nutbah. And in the lesser occultation, there were 4 representatives directly appointed by Imam Mahdi. And in the last deputyship, there was a final transmission which marked the end of the lesser occultation and marked the beginning of the greater occultation. And I want to recite that tawqi for you. It goes, O Ali ibn Muhammad Sayyimuri, may Allah increase the reward of your brothers on account of the difficulties borne by you. You will die within 6 days. Regulate your affairs and sum them up. Do not make a will to anybody. After this chain of special deputyship will end, and it will mark the beginning of the major occultation. Now I will reappear on divine commands, but that will be after a long time when the hearts of the people will become hardened, and the world will become full of injustice, tyranny, and oppression. Yes, there will be some who will claim to be my special deputies. Whoever claims to consult me before the emergence of Sufyani and the heavenly voice, he is a deceiver and liar. There is no power and strength except that of Allah, the Almighty, the High. And this was the final transmission given to the 4th and final deputy during the lesser occultation. And now that at this point we know we've entered the greater occultation, which we're currently in right now, I guess what to do is, while the Imam is still in occultation now, he still guides us by providing tawqiyat in the present time. And the greater occultation began in 328 after Hijrah. And there are some scholars in this time period, such as Sheikh Suduk and Sheikh Mufid, who have narrated tawqiyat that they've received from the Imam. And there's 3 instances that believers get to meet the Imam during this era of the greater occultation. The first is at the time of trouble. The second is that Imam Mahdi is present during every Hajj. And the third is that he attends the funeral of every believer who has no religious obligations pending on them, such as khums. And being in this era, we've been given advice from the Quran and the Ahl Bayt on what we can do to remain in contact with the Imam and establish a spiritual connection. In the Quran and Surah Al-Imran, Ayah 200, it says, O those who believe, be patient and enjoin patience amongst one another and remain in contact. And be careful of your duty to Allah lest you succeed. And the above verse has been explained by the holy Imams as, O those who believe, remain patient and steadfast during the period of ghaibat, of the Imam of the age. Be steadfast upon the right path as compared to your enemies. and remain in contact with the awaited Imam. Obey the laws and regulations of Islam as laid down by Allah, for surely in it is your success. And I want to focus on that concept of remaining in contact with the Imam. And the Imam has given us advice through Tawqiyat of how we can remain in contact with him during the major occultation and receive his guidance. He says, if you wish to be guided, then you shall be guided. And what you seek, you shall find. So this teaches us a few things. The first is that the only condition to receiving guidance is to simply ask for it. And there are many instances of people being visited by the Imam either in person or through a spiritual experience like a dream. I'm sure many of you have heard stories like that. And a relationship can be established by either by spiritual means. It doesn't have to be physical or visual. The Imam has said to express any desire to him, you need to express them to receive a reply. And expressing your desires are done through dua and tawassul. And the Imam has also given us advice on what we can do to become closer to him. He says, nothing has kept us away from our Shias but those actions that they have performed which we dislike. And here we learn that the Imam is reminding us that we need to maintain contact with him, and that the reason for the delay in his reappearance are those actions which he dislikes. And as for God's representative, as God's representative, the Imam is displeased by whatever displeases God. The best and the simplest way to strengthen our bond with Imam Mahdi is to obey Allah's commands, perform our duties, and refrain from sins. And there are plenty of things we could do to please the Imam, and one which he said is namaz. And he says on that point that nothing rubs the nose of the devil in dust more than namaz. And when a person performs namaz, shaitan looks at him with jealousy, because the mercy of Allah covers him while shaitan is deprived from the mercy. And here's an example where, although the Imam is in occultation, he's provided us with guidance and advice on something we can do in the present day to become closer to Allah and the Ahlul Bayt. And expanding on that point, he also says that sajda of shukr, which is performed after namaz, is the most necessary and obligatory sunnah. And if anyone wants to start performing this, if they're not already, Imam Reza gives a narration as to one way of performing sajda of shukr is after every obligatory prayer to go into prostration of thanksgiving and saying shukran lillah at least 3 times. It's just one of the many ways you can do it, and it's also a pretty easy way, I think. And Imam Mahdi describes his role in the universe, and he says that Allah the Almighty has not created the creation in vain, nor has he left them to wander. And here we learn that Imam Mahdi is really explaining how Allah has created us with purpose and has guided us by sending Anbiya for guidance. Hidayah has been passed from the Prophet to the Imams so that Islam is kept alive through them. Imam Mahdi is the present day treasurer of Allah's knowledge and trustee of Allah's hikmat. And without the Imam's current presence and activity on earth, there would be no difference between truth and falsehood. And why is it necessary that the Imam is present in our era and still active during the greater occultation? He says that surely the earth will never be devoid of a divine proof, whether he is apparent or he is hidden. And that really shows us that the earth cannot be left without the hujjat of Allah, so that Allah's proofs and arguments do not become invalid. Imam Mahdi reminds us in this hadith that his presence on earth is to remind us to remain firm on usul al-din. And the Imam also warns us of future imposters when he says, certainly the truth is with us and in us. Anybody who makes this claim other than us is a liar, a deceiver. And this is a warning from Imam Mahdi in advance of those who will claim to be him and attempt to lead people astray by playing on people's belief in him. He reminds us to remain firm on our faith and recognize him and not the false claimants as the representative of God during our time. And the Imam also provides a nice illustration as to the benefits we can receive from him during the greater occultation. And I'm sure you may have heard this hadith already, it's very famous. And as for the aspect of my benefit in my occultation, then it is like the advantage from the sun when the clouds hide it from the eyes. And people still benefit from the sun behind the clouds, yet await for the sun to come out to receive their full benefit. And denying the Imam's presence during occultation is like denying the sun's presence when it's hidden behind a cloud. A blind man cannot fully benefit from the sun, and similarly a blind heart cannot fully benefit from the Imam. Avoidance of sin allows you to receive more light and guidance from the Imam. And the Imam introduces himself, and in this saying he says, "I am the seal of the successors. Through me, Allah, mighty and glorified be He, will dispel the calamities from my family and my followers." And there's a few things we can learn from this saying. The first is that we know peace and security will come eventually everywhere on earth. And the second is that evildoers will be annihilated and the truth will remain. And the third is that Imam Zaman's role on earth is a reminder that we should turn to him during calamity, because he is Allah's tool for dispelling the world of all calamity. The Imam also comments on how we should seek knowledge, and he says, "Seeking knowledge from any other way than the way of the Ahlul Bayt is tantamount to our rejection." And this is a good reminder that to remain on the straight path, we should follow the teachings of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt only. And looking at the present day and what we can do now, the Imam has given us a saying that we should pray more for his reappearance, because in it is our salvation. And there's many ways we can pray for his reappearance, and the Imam has revealed more than a dozen du'as that we can recite to help us reach our salvation. And two examples of these are Du'a Iftitah and Ziyarat Ada Yasin. And I want to talk about both those du'as a little bit. In Du'a Iftitah, it was revealed by Imam Mahdi, and it was to be recited every night in Ramadan. So that's something we can do coming up in about 2-3 weeks. And the dua has common themes of man's relationship with Allah and divine leaders. And it talks about Imam Mahdi's coming, preparing believers for his arrival, and praying for his help. And the dua is a good reminder that we should become aware of our responsibilities during his ghaibat. And in Ziyarat Ada Yasin, it's actually a hadith Qudsi, which means that it's a direct saying of Allah brought by Imam Zaman on earth. And this ziyarat and its accompanying dua are a supplication that strengthen our connection with Imam Mahdi and fortify our deen. And in the dua, we not only offer our salutations to the Imam and ask God to bestow him divine blessings, but we reaffirm to God and the Ahlul Bayt our belief in them and the tenets of Islam. And the Imam tells us more about how we should conduct ourselves and appreciate our responsibilities that we have in this period. He says, "Then each one of you should act in a way that will take you closer to our love, and refrain from all those acts that will lead to our detest and wrath." And this is a warning from the Imam that we should keep the satisfaction of our Imam in mind in every action we do. And this tradition is a reminder of his presence, and his presence is a reminder of God. The Imam does not want you to ask for forgiveness after he has reappeared and it's too late. He wants you to become a role model for others, and as Shias, we have an extra responsibility since we're the followers of the Ahlul Bayt and should be recognized for their good akhlaq. And yeah, that was the final point. Thank you.